Okay. Anxhela, feel free to start.
Oh, thank you, Tina. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's RECAS seminar. It's my pleasure as a RECAS fellow to host today's event and to introduce our guest speaker, Professor Robert Pichler. Professor Robert Pichler is a historical anthropologist at the Institute for Habsburg and Balkan Studies of the Austrian Academy of Science. In 2017, he obtained his venia docenti in Southeast European history. He currently serves as the president of the International Association for Southeast European Anthropology and is a member of the board of the Center for Balkan Societies and Culture. His research focuses on migration, social history, family, kinship relations, nation-building processes, and visual studies. In addition to his academic work, he is also a photographer who incorporates visual media into both scholarly research and artistic practice. Today, Professor Pichler will speak on the topics hopes and realities of return, old patterns, and new realities in the Western Balkans. Migration has profoundly shaped the social, economic, and cultural development of the Western Balkans, while public and academic discussion often focuses on emigration and the large-scale departure of young people from the region. Migration is also a story of enduring ties, family connection, remittances, and aspiration of return. Historically, return migration was an integral part of the established migration patterns in Southeast Europe, particularly through tradition of temporary labor migration and circular mobility. However, in the recent decades, return has become increasingly difficult to realize. For many migrants, it remains an aspiration, an image future, rather than a concrete reality. Drawing on his extensive research on migration and return in the Balkans, Professor Pichler will explore how historical migration patterns intersect with contemporary realities and what these developments mean for the society and communities of the region. We are very grateful that he has accepted our invitation to join us today. And Professor Pichler, thank you for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to share a few of my findings with you with regard to return migration to Southeastern Europe. As you said already, mostly to the Western Balkans. I'm just trying to check my. It works. Yeah. So I think I hope you see the screen now. So this is the structure. This is what I'm going to speak about. I will start with some very generic reflections on the phenomenon of return migration and the research that is done on this phenomenon. And then I will jump into two case studies. One case study that I conducted in the present-day Republic of North Macedonia. This is a comparative study of two villages that I did in the early 2000s. And finally, I will then turn also to Albania. So my main focus will be on Albanian cases, first in North Macedonia and later on in Albania to see how the phenomenon of return migration is how relevant it is and how often it is also related to difficulties because return, as you will see, is mostly not the same as very often imagined. It is not homecoming. So let me start with some very generic observations and considerations. So return migration, in fact, is also research on this phenomenon started relatively late compared to other types of migration, for instance, emigration. So a lot of research mostly focused on emigration. Studies on return began mostly in the 1970s, 80s, and they were very much inspired also by the idea of development, of possible development with remittances. So the idea that the money that flows back could also enhance the economic situation in the sending countries. So only a few thoughts about the types or the patterns of return migration. So we have very different motivations. So there is, of course, one very widespread phenomenon in the Balkans visible. This is retirement return, people who return from their often long careers as labor migrants to their places of origin. Then we have the phenomenon of successful or failed return. So failed return is also something that is hardly spoken about. These are people that could not make it in the West, but who or in the countries where they went to, and they returned. But then more visible is those so-called successful returnees, those who made it, those who returned, those who invested, those who created new opportunities in their home countries. Of course, a huge issue is also the forced return, deportations of asylum seekers, for instance. This is also I don't kind of speak about that, but this is a huge field also in the return migration studies. Important also more in recent research, more anthropologically and sociologically inspired research, issues of family, of care. This is also a widespread motive that people do return for care reasons, to care for their parents, for instance, who stayed behind. Of course, emotional ties matter a lot. Family relations matter a lot. So these are issues that are mostly studied in anthropological inquiries. And then we have another phenomenon related to return. This is also an issue that has been discussed for long. This is diaspora return. So we know it, for instance, in the former Yugoslav republics, that there are quite a lot of diaspora returnees who also played a role in the war and in the aftermath of the war, in the rebuilding, in the reconstruction of the respective countries. What we can also observe is that return migration is not necessarily the end of the migration, but often part of an ongoing transnational process. So I will tackle on that a bit later when I delve a little bit into the history of return migration. So what I mentioned before is that migration was very much discussed from the 1960s, 70s onwards in relation to development. So there was mostly a very critical approach to this possibilities of development, inspired by Marxist and leftist theoreticians that mostly stressed the phenomenon of dependency, that those countries that send migrants but mostly in a periphery, they are in a dependent state, and migrants who move out from the countries. I speak here again about the Western Balkans. They often are faced with exploitation in the country, in the destination countries, which leads in the end to underdevelopment and to further emigration. So this idea that migration, when it becomes routinized, it leads to further migration. There is this approach of the so-called migration system approach that is following that. Of course, there is a huge discussion about brain drain in relation to outmigration and to the phenomenon of de-skilling abroad, which is also can be observed in many cases after the end of socialism, that people that were quite well skilled were faced with blue collar jobs in the respective destination countries. Another phenomenon that is observed is the increase of social disparities in the sending countries, that those people who manage to send back money, to send back remittances, are often in a way better position than others are. So these are mostly the critical approaches to this question of development or underdevelopment. And when it comes particularly to return, again, the so-called pessimists, one could say, they argue that investments often do not go into productive areas, but mostly into consumption and ritual culture. I will give you an example later, that a lot of money of the return is invested in rituals, in weddings, for instance. And this is called progress without development. So there is money pouring into the region, but it doesn't really contribute to development. And the other issue is often discussed that returnees, they can hardly use their qualifications profitable in their sending countries. Also, this is an issue that matters a lot in the Balkan regions, that those who return, they do have difficulties to enter into institutional structures. They face mistrust, they faced envy, and they often hesitate to return. Also at the university level, so there are several studies of returnees who try to get a foothold at universities. On the other hand, we also have the optimists. We should not forget the optimists. They criticize that the pessimistic, very structurally deterministic, in the sense that they overlook the potentials of return migration, and they don't look at the agency of return migration. And this is something that is more discussed recently in anthropological studies, also in sociology, where this concept of the agents of change is very much stressed. So that returnees, they have a huge potential. They mostly in the private sector, they are able to invest. They are able to build capacities, and there is a lot of economic dynamic behind these processes. These are only a few very general considerations I wanted to start with in order to give you an idea about the various dimensions of research in the field of return migration. Let me now move a bit into history. Since I'm historian or a historic anthropologist, I very much also do historical inquiries, and I conducted research mostly in Albania, in southern Albania, but also in Macedonia. And probably some of you are aware about, since you are from the region, about what I'm going to speak about. But that for me, the main argument to tackle this is as you already mentioned, the intersection between what has been and how it continued. So somehow the continuities, the legacies of the past, to take a look at it. So when we look at the region of Southeastern Europe, the first visible feature when you look at the topographical map is its geography. And geography matters a lot when it comes to pre-industrial economy because the mountains, as you see, I mean, the term Balkan derives from the mountains. The Turkish term is telling in several respects. Mostly when it comes to migration, there is a relationship, of course, between the resources that people find in their environment, in their immediate environment, and the opportunities they have to make a living with these resources. And the mountainous areas, they do provide limited resources in principle. And since the Ottoman period, uh, the mountains in the region were heavily populated, so many people had to make a living with their environment, and there are not so many options to make economy in these very diverse mountainous areas. But one can figure out two main professions. The one is two professions of so-called mobile economy. The one is pastoralism. So this is a phenomenon widespread in the region, and the photos that you see somehow, remnants of a previous historical migration pattern. I took these pictures in the Kurvelesh area, which is part of southwestern Albania, where after the end of socialism, private herding continued, and people still practice this, of course, on a moderate scale. But this kind of pastoralism that shepherds move with their cattle from the mountain pastures to the plains in a rhythm between summer and winter. This was a very widespread strategy in Balkan economic history, and you can find it from Bulgaria to Greece to Albania to Serbia and to Bosnia. So it's an overall pattern on various scales. You find it from semi-nomadism to agropastoralism. So there are various types of this kind of mobile economy, always related to the ecological setting in which it happened. These are a few photographs that I took there when in 1998, when peasants or shepherds restarted their way of private herding in the Kurvelesh area. Another widely spread economic tradition is the so-called gurbet or a Becalbar. Probably you have an idea what it means. So the gurbet or a kurbet, the Turkish word kurbet, meaning foreignness or life in a strange place or being away from home. So this meaning is very strong. This was used in the Albanian context and in the Turkish context. And in the South Slavic context, people use often the word Becalba. Becalba that is also related to emotional connotations as hardship, longing for home, separation from family and community. So these terms were used, and they partly still are used to describe migration patterns in the region. This kind of labor migration was very widespread in the 18th and mostly in the 19th century. It was a enormous widespread pattern. This is a map a picture that I show you from a study from one town in North Macedonia, the town of Kruševo, where historians reconstructed the major destinations of labor migration from Kruševo in the mid-19th century. And when you look at this, you see how widely connected this place that was in the mountains of North Macedonia was in the 19th century with the world, with the Western world and with the Eastern world. So people were moving out uh, uh, constantly. And according to these studies, around 70% of the male labor population was engaged in this kind of labor migration. Uh, it was a circular migration, and what was so um, specific to this kind of migration is that return was always a part and parcel of this concept. So people did not move out mostly to stay at their destination places, but to return. Return was crucial, and they also uh, made their social life in their places of origin. They married there, they built their families there, and they usually returned after a certain period. I move now to another. This was only a brief look into history, into the deeper history. I now move to my research that I conducted um, in North Macedonia, uh, which was time-wise focusing on the period of the 1960s to the I'm still engaging in this research. So it's a more contemporary research, and it's a research on two villages, two neighboring villages, one Albanian village, as you see it here on the map, called Veleshta, and one mixed village, which is called Labunishta. Labunishta is a mixed village. In this village, there are Macedonian-speaking Muslims living, and Orthodox Macedonians. Labunishta is situated on a hill, and Veleshta is situated in the plain. So I did this research based on census data, photographs, and secondary literature, mostly based on materials from an American anthropologist who went there in the 1960s and collected a lot of data that I could use later on. So I did field research in the villages, and my main intention or the main aim of this study was to understand the significance of migration in the divergent developments that Albanians and Macedonians went through during socialism. So these two communities had went through quite different development path, and I will briefly explain how this is related to migration and how it is related to return migration. So this is a map of Macedonia, simply to make you aware about something you are probably already aware, that Macedonia is a very much a multi-ethnic, multicultural country with a majority Macedonian, ethnic Macedonian population, and with the largest minority of the Albanians that were around 25% in 2002. Numbers, I don't go into numbers, this is all very contested. But what was interesting to observe in these villages with regard to migration was that with socialist modernization that started after the Second World War in Macedonia, also there was also the founding of the Republic of the Socialist Republic of Macedonia taking place, and so modernization was one key element of state building all over in all former socialist countries. I think all this is everything. These are things that you are very much aware about. But what was discernible then in this particular context was that the ethnic Macedonian population, they mostly moved within the country. So they went through a process of internal migration from the villages to the towns and to the cities of the country. Whereas the Muslims and the Albanians are mostly Muslims in Macedonia, But not only the Albanians, also the Macedonian-speaking Muslims, they mostly stayed in their villages. They didn't move out from the village. I can't go into the reasons for that, but these divergent movement strategies, one could say, brought about very different social, cultural, and economic developments. The Albanians started only moving out when Yugoslavia opened um, its labor market to Western countries. This was in the 1960s when Yugoslavia made some labor migration agreements with Germany, Austria, and other countries. And interestingly, from then on, more Albanians and Macedonian-speaking Muslims used the opportunity to leave um, the village and to try to earn the money abroad. And again, now this Yugoslav migration agreement that was signed between these countries was very much based on the idea of return migration. So the Yugoslav yeah the terminology was or spoke about people temporarily moving abroad. So they were supposed to return to their country and to their places of origin. And this is what happened also in the respective Albanian case. So when Albanians moved out, when Macedonian Muslims moved out to Western countries, they very much somehow continued the old pattern of gurbet or kurbet. I can show you some photographs in order um, to give you an idea about how the villages looked like in the early 1960s. These are two pictures from this American anthropologist so you can see that the villages back then they were still very much yeah in structures as they were created in the 18th, 19th century according to this Ottoman way of mahala building. So neighborhoods, kinship neighborhoods, were still very dominant in this way of architecture and building with the walls, etc. So that private life, the high walls around the farmsteads, private life still remained very much distant from the public, which was dominated by the male. On the right side, you see people, and you see the poverty was quite visible, one could say, yeah, in the early 1960s. This was the time before migration started, before people moved out to the West. And when I came to the village in the 2000 early 2000 for the first time, I visited the place several times. The village had completely changed. So you see here a few photographs from the village as it looks now. So and all what you see here is mostly the result of labor migration. Is the result of people who made the who moved out from the country, who worked in Austria, in Germany, etc., who earned their money and who sent back their money. It was mostly a male issue until the end of the 1990s. So it was this kind of labor migration was still very male dominated, and the money that flew back arrived mostly to rebuild the village and to invest into the village. So still this idea of return was so dominant, and still the idea that modernity comes mostly with the influence from the West. Yeah, here you see a typical example where you can where the architecture I think is very telling, that the houses were built according to this concept of the extended family, that and also according to the concept that the, the sons or the brothers would inherit the same share of the property of a house, which is a very widespread pattern in Southeastern Europe. So equal male inheritance. So you can see this even in the architecture. And in the basement, they always or often had the idea that there they would start their private business. So this is what one could say a typical Gastarbeiter, as we call it, a Gastarbeiter house in the region. And this, of course, is not confined to Northern Macedonia. You would find it all over the region, all over there where Gastarbeiter labor migration happened in former Yugoslavia. You wouldn't find that in Romania or in Bulgaria or in Albania, where labor migration to Western countries was not possible. Yeah. The picture on the right side, I took only also to explain the divergences between the projections of a modern life that was on the one hand reflected in the architecture. On the other hand, when you visit the families there, they still very often live in the basement. So the first floor, second floor is mostly uninhabited, and people feel most comfortable in the basement. So it's still, this old cultural pattern that mostly the older people they don't like to be visible from the outside, whereas the house is built mostly for the outsiders. So it's a lot of paradoxical or seemingly paradoxical things that one can observe when one looks closer at architecture. What is also a lot the case is what I mentioned before. A lot of money is invested in ritual culture. Both villages that I studied, they do practice mostly village endogamy. This means that even with migration, many of those people still marry within the village. Even if they live in Switzerland, in Germany and Austria, a high share of people would meet somewhere at village festivities, and they would return in summer to marry, and this creates a huge economic boom, one could say, a boom that is expressed in hotels and restaurants. So if you compare these photographs with the photographs of the early 1960s, which is not long, this is a life period, is in between these photographs. You see the dimension, the dynamic of transformation that was mostly achieved with the remittances of returnees, and also with the hope of these people that on some day they would come back forever. So this is very much an idea that was present until recently. So when I did research in the early 2000s, there was still a lot of this hope in the air. These are also signs of this nouvelle riche. So you have to show what you have achieved abroad, and this also goes hand in hand with Albanian nationalism within this framework of the interethnic conflict in the Republic of Macedonia. Because, and this is important, this was also a result of my study, that at the end of when Yugoslavia was dissolving, as the final period of Yugoslavia was also marked by a severe economic crisis, and this crisis was mostly affected the ethnic Macedonian population because they were way better integrated into the fabric of the socialist state. So they suffered from shrinking living standards, whereas Albanians who had moved outside the country, who never integrated into this state, they returned with money and with power. And this is also an element, was also an element of the interethnic conflict, and still is a topic within Macedonia. So these are now finally pictures of the gloomy reality in the villages. When you go there now, you see that most of this infrastructure is empty most of the year, and the idea of return has faded. So there is no real realistic idea of return. Here is I was a month ago. I was in the village to visit and to see what has changed in the meantime, and this is the only company that is headed by a returnee family from Switzerland who returned and with the idea to build up their enterprise in the village, but they are facing serious problems, and this is also related to some issues that are not only visible in the respective village, but very often in the region. One problem is that they lack qualified labor. They don't have people, or they don't find people uh, with qualifications that they need. They imported all the technology from Switzerland, and they they produce on a very high standard, but the problem is first of all the lack of qualifications of local employees, and the second problem they face is the motivation that is lacking among young people, because simply there is the village is so uh, strongly connected to Western countries that the young people from the village, they rather go to Switzerland to work there for 3 months and earn there more than they would earn in this company within a year. So this creates, there is no motivation for young people to follow a daily labor with an income, with a salary that is way beyond the one that they get in Western countries. And I think this is an issue that is not uh, confined to the respective village. This is widespread. These are also, I don't have the time to see the time is running. This is another topic that is very interesting to see, and also very much related to remittances and return. This is the new Islam among Albanians and Macedonian-speaking Muslims. You see here the pictures I took a few weeks ago in a village, and the mosque that has been built for 1 million euro around is the main investment that has been done in the region, whereas the local infrastructure is completely deteriorating. The money comes mostly from migrants in Switzerland, in this case, who and what people are mostly proud about is the golden roof that was imported from Turkey, and this is somehow now one could say a template that is used for other mosques in the area. So there is still investment, but there is mostly not a lot investment in economic infrastructure, and there is a huge frustration with the political establishment in the region. The political establishment has changed in the meantime. It was for long Macedonian dominated, now it is Albanian dominated, but nothing has changed. So corruption is a huge issue, and I think when I speak about that, mostly when I look to Albania, it's very similar that people are frustrated by corruption, and corruption is one of those reasons why people rather stay apart and do not return, even if there are many opportunities in the region to invest. As you see, this area of Struga, close to the Lake Ohrid, is one of the most beautiful areas in in this region. Let me move. I see I have 10 minutes left only. I will say a few words about the situation in Albania, which is of course different to the one that I just portrayed with regard to Northern Macedonia, because Albania has a different history and has a different history of mobility control. Albania was probably the most heavily, severely controlled country with regard to mobility. So it closed its borders in the 1950, and international migration was from then on impossible. But Albania also practiced, or the government practiced, a policy of severe internal migration control, which differs a lot to other socialist countries. For instance, Yugoslavia, as I explained before, in Yugoslavia, the socialist focus was very much on urbanization. Investment flew into the cities and the towns, whereas the Albanian system and Enver Hoxha's idea was to achieve a kind of an equilibrium between the countryside and the urban areas. And it was hardly possible for people from the villages to move into the cities during socialism. At the same time, Albania practiced, as Romania, for instance, as well, a pro-natalist population policy. So, with the result that the population increased enormously, it tripled within the 45 years of socialist government. So, from 1.2 million to more than 3 million people. And the result was the result of this isolationist policy on the one hand and the pro-natalist policy on the other hand was when Albania collapsed in 1991, this led to an enormous outmigration, but also migration within the country. Migration scholars speak about the phenomena about migration explosion. This is what happened with Albania, because many people could not make a living any longer, mostly in the remote areas of the countries where they had to stay for decades. So this is the history, the recent history of Albania. Only with a few words, the 1990s were really a terrible period. I was doing research in the country, so I really have a lived experience of the 1990s in Albania. And this escalated again in 1997 with the collapse of pyramid schemes in the country, which led to another wave of emigration. This time, whole families moved out the country. And with the result, I cannot go into details, but these are current numbers, so you can see how population changed in the last 35 years. So from 3.2 million inhabitants in 89 to 2.4 millions with the latest census. Although people doubt that the census is correct, people say that that Albania, less people still live in Albania. The problem, of course, is that for Albania as well, is that the vast majority of the immigrant population is in the working age bracket. Yeah. So this, of course, leads to lower fertility, and in relation to high longevity, Albania's population is shrinking and it's graying. So the age group 65 plus, as you see on the slide, is rapidly increasing. So it was 7.5 in 2001 percent, and now it's around 20% of the population beyond 65. This also leads to labor shortage and to new immigration, a phenomenon that is new for many Balkan countries. For Greece, for Bulgaria, Romania, you see that these countries were mostly countries of emigration, and now they are facing or they are experiencing also immigration to counter the labor shortage in the country. What is also interesting in the Albanian case is an Italian retirement migration. This is also observed in recent times, so that Italian pensioners they move to Albania to make buy real estates on the coast or also in Tirana, and for them, living standards are way better in Albania than in Italy. So this is also a quite new phenomenon. I think in 5 minutes is okay, or it's 3 minutes when I can finish then. Uh, Still, Albania is facing a huge desire to emigrate. Um, this is not the most recent survey, but according to this survey from the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, uh, 66.7% of the young population would very likely leave the country. Yeah, this is enormous. This is an enormous number, and you do have similar numbers in Kosovo and in North Macedonia. So, but also Bosnia, of course. Bulgaria, Romania, and Croatia, they also have high numbers, but situation there is a bit better. Uh, so return migration is scarce overall. It happens, people come back, but many don't come back permanently. There was a return wave with the crisis in Greece and the economic crisis 2007, 2008, where many had to return from these countries because Greece and Italy are those countries where most of the Albanians moved to. But this happened, but many of those people, they didn't stay in Albania. They used the next opportunity to move further out of the country. So in recent times, I mean, government claims that there is a return taking place, but government is lacking a consistent return policy, as do other countries have. Croatia, for instance, has a very strong policy to attract returnees from the diaspora to invest in the country. This is lacking in Albania. There's not a lot going on, and most of those who do return, they do invest in the private sector. So and this is something that you can observe all over the region. So people who return, who want to invest in the country, they mostly invest in family businesses. And this is also a relation that or something that points to the lack of confidence into state and state institutions and public institutions. Yeah. So one trusts their own family mostly, and one has really one shies away from going to from having closer contact to public institutions. These are numbers, more recent numbers. Yeah, I think I will finish only. I would have had uh, some accounts of female return, which is an interesting topic, but we don't have the time to go into that. It's interesting that there are female entrepreneurs. A recent study came out by Ermira Danay, who took research, who made interviews with women, returning women. And this is also another trend that could be stressed here is that most of those returnees don't go to the places where they moved out. They mostly go to Tirana. Tirana is the new hub, is the new urban center. Tirana grew from 230,000 inhabitants in 1991 to around 800,000. Numbers are not completely reliable because the environs are huge, and when you go to Tirana, you will see it is already connected to the harbor city of Durrës. So this is one huge conglomerate which with a lot of effects on architecture, on building, with a lack of city planning. I mean, I made a book recently on the topic, the Kioske book. So I studied this phenomenon mostly on the coast. Yeah. Okay, I do have. This is my final comments because Tirana, as I said, is a magnet where people are going to. But when you go to the countryside, you will see whole areas they are completely abandoned. This is a picture I took in the Vjosa Valley in southern Albania recently that is telling that the social infrastructure completely collapsed, that people moved out from there, and there is no hope for return. One could say, yeah, and this is. I made some conversation and interviews with young people there. This young guy, he's here with his aunt, uh, and he told me that he's going to Italy very soon when he finishes school, because his relatives, they live there in northern Italy. They have already prepared for him. So he will, after finishing school, he will go there simply because, and this is his argument, you cannot make a normal life in Albania with the income that you earn there. A normal life in his imagination is to have an apartment, to have a family, and to have a car. So these are the basics that he said that he would like to have for life. And with this 400, 500 euro average income in Albania, it's impossible to do that. So for him, it's very logical to leave the country, and it's not even a discussion. This is, one could say, a self-perpetuating system of migration, that there are already people outside the country. They are already anchored in the destination countries, and they enable those who are still living in Albania to follow them. So this is like a chain migration that is ongoing, and I think this is something that is happening very often in Albania. Another issue, and this relates, my final issue relates to current demonstrations that are ongoing in Albania. There's a lot of protests now against the building of luxury resort at the Vjosa Narda area, and by the Trump family company. Yeah, Kushner's family is there very present. I was visiting the area. I know the area very very well, and I think the man whom I met here, who is doing here, who is fishing at the Vjosa, he spoke about all those issues that are relevant for his everyday life. And one thing is that, for instance, that he doesn't make a living from fishing, but still uh, he's doing that on a regular basis, and to better up his income for his family. But there is such a lot of destruction ongoing with the river, in the river, with electrofishing, that hardly any animals any fish are still alive in this zone. You see on the photographs on the back, you see the waste that is simply uh, um, washed into the river. So there is a lot of yeah, one could say a lack of ecological awareness on the one hand, but also this is also, I would say, related to massive outmigration, and to the fact that people who do not expect to stay in these countries. If you have, as a young woman or man, intend to leave the country, how would you develop a sense of awareness for these countries, a sense of responsibility for the country? This is something that I observed a lot in the remote, or in the yeah, areas where migration has had an enormous effect on the living conditions in the region. Yeah. So I think I will stop here. I spoke too long, I see. I hope it was for you somehow useful and interesting. And if you have any questions, of course, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Professor, for this fascinating and thought-provoking presentation. It was extremely interesting to hear your reflection on migration, return, and in these evolving realities of the Western Balkans. I would like to start our discussion with a few questions, and then we will open the floor to the other RECAS fellows and participants. So I will start the first with a question. In your work on Kurbet, you argued that traditional labor migration in the Balkans was fundamentally oriented toward return, whereas contemporary migration often results in permanent settlements abroad. Do you think that the culture of return is gradually disappearing among Albanians, or it's simply taking new forms in today's transnational context?
Yeah, the culture, one could say that, I mean, it's a generational issue. So when now I'm referring to the situation in Macedonia and North Macedonia, you can observe it's clearly a generational issue that those people who grew up in the region and who moved out as gurbetçiler, as the people say, as labor migrants, of course they still have the idea to return, but since their grandchildren mostly were born in the destination countries, for them return gets a different meaning. Probably the concept of return itself is not useful any longer, because where to return if you are born in another country? For them, return gets a different meaning. It's more the idea to return to the village or to the place of the father or the grandfather, and then it becomes a kind of ancestral return. It becomes a kind of diaspora return, which is of course happening, which is taking place in context of holidays, summer holidays, so that you spend time for a limited
Festive
time.
holidays, yeah.
Exactly, with your family, that you get back. As I said, in Macedonia, wedding still matters, so people do marry in the region. They do this very yeah, parties, these wedding parties that are very costly, and but they consider this as part of their tradition. So I would say that return culture is of course fading. So there is not much. I mean, mostly in those areas where economy has deteriorated, there is for the new generation, for those who grew up in the West, there is hardly yeah,
Yeah.
a desire or a strategy to return to these places. Uh, I think Albania is different, as I tried to explain, because Gurbet was already interrupted with the socialist takeover of power, because from then on there was no labor migration any longer possible. So, but principally in Albania, the situation is similar, in that those who moved out in the early 90s, and those who, many of them moved out with their families already, or they married outside the country. They have their children in Italy, in Greece. So for them, a return to Albania might be an option if there is a very rare opportunity for economic investment.
Yeah.
Or, of course, for holiday return, which is taking place. But people who are in Italy and Greece, they mostly don't go to Albania for holiday. It's more people from Kosovo. Uh, so they are they are coming to Albania, Kosovo, Macedonia. So the migrants that are in Germany, in Western Europe, they they mostly go to Albania for holidays. So I think generally the idea to return to these countries is fading away. Yeah, there's no no
Yes.
real perspective for that. On the other hand doesn't mean that there could be, of course, initiatives, yeah, to stimulate a return, mostly for investment, for instance. Yeah, this would be very important, and also it would be very important to halt this migration chain. So this dynamic of outmigration. So these are more the issues that require um, considerations. Yeah, from the political side, I think.
Yeah. As you expressed in your presentation, Albania has experienced a significant loss of young people and skilled professionals over the past decades. In your view, what institutional conditions are necessary for return migration to be transformed into genuine brain gain rather than merely temporary return?
Yeah, that's tricky. I think that many countries that they do have they consider or they reflect on this option, and there's a from the 1990s on already this hope that people would return and invest and bring not only money but bring also skills. This is so it's not only about the material resources that flow in. It's also about the social skills that people have gained in other countries. So this expectation and hope is very strong. Um, but as I said already, the realities are difficult. I think one of the main obstacles is the lack of transparency, and that in the countries, also in Albania, it is very obvious. Yeah, there's a huge lack of transparency on the political, on the economic level. So who owns what, and of course there is also uh, what is what research points at that it's very difficult to advance economically if you don't have your connections, if you don't have relations, friends,
Yeah.
relatives, or political connections. So it's so your advancement, your progress economically depends on that, and this is of course very often related to clientelistic networks, and this is something that harms, of course, and hinders people to return, because what the country would require, what would be transparent institutions where that you could trust in, where where also your skills, but your attainments that you achieve, your achievements that you had from abroad, that they could be invested properly uh, in the country. And this is something uh, I would say that it's like, at least in the Albanian case and in the Macedonian case, as I observe it, this is mostly lacking. So there are more obstacles, I would say, than hopes. I mean, the region of Ohrid-Struga is a very good example for that. So you would have the best circumstances from the nature, the environment, the infrastructure is there, but still uh, it hardly anybody risks the to return and to invest properly. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
Albania, as I said, has different preconditions. There is a lot of investment going on the coast. There's a lot of building, but also this is highly intransparent. Uh, People hardly know who owns what, who owns the land. The same is in Tirana. There's a lot of this new architecture, new houses built, these skyscrapers built in the city, but people are asking often for whom is it built and who is the who is the investor. So as long as this all is so intransparent, and as I think I mean, a colleague with regard to Tirana coined the term. It's a globalization without the global. He said that, so if you take a closer look at who is investing, it's mostly Albanian mafia and a lot
Politicians,
of gray washing and but it appears when you come to Tirana, it appears as if it was a globalized city with global investment, but I don't think this is the case. So these are still issues that yeah that need to be tackled, politically, and at the moment there is not much hope for that.
Thank you. Now I would like to open the floor to our fellow researcher and participants. So if anyone would like to ask a question or share a comment, please feel free to do. Okay, Tessa?
Hi. I wanted to ask, so first of all, thank you for this talk. I wanted to ask whether you feel like Albania joining the EU would make a significant difference of sorts for immigration efforts as well.
Mm-hmm. This I don't think that makes a significant difference simply because when you look at what happened with Bulgaria joining the EU and Romania joining the EU and also Croatia joining the EU, so it even increased the outmigration for a certain period of time. Although in a long-term perspective or in a middle-term perspective, it might change things. Romania has now, at least last year, they still have a strong outmigration, but there is return migration taking place on a higher scale as in other countries of the region. But still, outmigration is very strong, as I said. Alone in Vienna, I think last year more than 30,000 Romanians arrived to work in Vienna. So there is it's still a strong outmigration ongoing. On the other hand, probably with EU integration, institutions hopefully become more transparent and more credible. And this would be a precondition, of course, for European Union accession for the Western Balkan countries. Yeah, I mean Albania is hoping to get access in 2030, as Montenegro is doing. But yeah, let's see. But with regard to migration trends, I'm not very. I don't believe that this would reverse the current trend. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there is another question or. Okay, if I can make another question, I wanted to ask about this these large houses that we actually see in every city, in every village of the Balkans, and you spoke in your presentation. I wanted to know that, so does this houses still represent a realistic expectation of return, or have they become symbolic monuments to a migration project that may never be completed?
I would say it's something in between. It has symbolic meaning, of course, but it has more symbolic meaning that realistic meaning in the sense that people would return there for good. as I said, they do come back. They return for holiday reasons, for New Year or whatever, and so I think one has to understand it also socially and psychologically. So for uh, it is it is as if you have a second opportunity. If you are a migrant abroad, even if you are integrated in the respective societies, there are still a lot of uncertainties. Migrant life and even post-migrant life. Uh, so when I speak of post-migrants, I mean those children of migrants. Is still yeah is still very often closely connected to the culture of origin. This is due to the fact that transnational and translocal relations they matter for many people. And when it comes, as I explained briefly, with these buildings of mosques, for instance, this shows that there is still a strong link, emotional and in this case religious link to the place of origin. So there is, this um, there is a realistic a manifestation of this idea, not to return, but to have at least one leg in this place where I come from. As where I can go back there, I can spend time there. I feel people still say they feel home when they get back to the village. The older generations, those who grew up, they feel home, they say. They feel more home when they enter the village as they feel in Vienna, for instance, which is also an interesting. I mean, I also did a study of migrants in Vienna from these villages, and I also spoke to Austrians, and this is also something that one should not underestimate. For instance, for older Austrians, because city like Vienna or other Western cities have changed a lot with migration in the last 30, 40 years. It's a visible change, and mostly those areas where people with Muslim background moved in have changed because it changed also the outside, the surface of the town, the places changed, etc. And two old ladies living in such a neighborhood, they told me that, I mean, they grew up in a socialist environment because Vienna is very much a socialist city, yeah. And they said, but they do have difficulties because there is a lack of respect, as they say, and for them growing older, it creates a lot of insecurities in their life. But they made an interesting argument when they said to me, "You look, they always have a second home. They can go back. They do have their houses because they know that they move out in summer. They always have a second option. We don't have that," she said. We have to live here in this building, and we cannot go to wherever. But they do have, and so in this sense, it gets another meaning, this second home. And I think the second home is for migrants or for post-migrants, the second home matters. It is important. It gives some sort of
It's second
flexibility.
option.
Yeah, it's an additional option. Yeah, but it creates, in this intergenerational and intercultural uh, um, contexts and relations, it gets different meanings, and therefore, it matters. It still matters, and it will matter. I mean, there is also a lot of money invested in that. Also, it's enormous, and I'm following also the conflict within families. One should not underestimate this aspect because now the younger generation is very much often very critical towards their parents, saying, why did you invest in the village so much money, and we live in tiny apartments in Vienna, for instance. Why didn't you invest in education? This is a huge topic, yeah. Why didn't you invest in other other resources? You invested in houses and in land because many of the migrants bought a lot of land. They come from a peasant background, and land for them is something very important. Yeah, and house is very important because house these meanings. So there is a lot of intergenerational struggles ongoing and conflicts ongoing, which we usually don't see as non-migrants. Yeah, you can grasp them when you know people better, or when you do interviews with them. Not only interviews, you really have to spend time with people to understand the inner family dynamics of migrants from these regions. Yeah. So
Yeah.
one could say from pre-modernity to post-modernity. So when you look at this situation in the 60s, yeah, and when you look at how they live now. Yeah.
Okay. We have also Loretta who wants to. Loretta, please, the microphone. Okay.
Ich darf ja nicht Deutsch sprechen, gell? Dann spreche ich Englisch, obwohl ich das komplett vergessen habe. Ja, Anxhela. Anxhela, thank you for invitation. Robert, vielen, also, okay. English. Thank you so much for this panorama that you give us about the reason to go to the immigration and maybe to come back to the immigration. I am from Albania, but I'm living more than 27 years in Germany. I'm married here, so I will not go back to Albania because I have a German husband. But two reasons for that I see that young people from Albania maybe will not go back to Albania are the skills that they became here in Germany, for example. They have not possibility to give it in Albanian. As you say, we have vitamin B, we have corruption there. And if you don't have bright shoulders from the politician or maybe many money, you cannot find a place in Albanian to give your skills. And the second point, and I think that is not only from the migration from Albania, I think from all over the world, is the topic of belonging. You speak about second houses. I think many of us that are in immigration or migration, sometimes we are not sure which is our first house and second house. And this is one point that we are discussing since many years here in University of Stuttgart and Tübingen. And I want to know from you, what do you think about the people that want to go back? The first step is have to come from government, or the people have to be so strong and said, my skills, I will bring it back to my country. And the second, you think that this global point of view that you said is only in one country, or is all over the world this problem is globally?
Sorry, the second question I didn't get correctly.
The global, we have a global, you can say global is positive or negative.
Okay. The
Or what do you
globalization,
think
you mean
about
the
it?
global trends or the global developments? Yeah. I mean, to your first question, I don't think there is a recipe for that. I mean, in order to attract return migration, of course, there has to be a governmental policy that is plausible, that is credible, that gives a trust and confidence in people who would like to get back. This is an important precondition for everything, for everyone. On the other hand, it's not only the government, of course. I mean, it's the whole infrastructure. You have to think about schooling, for instance. How would you get back with your kids if they don't speak the language any longer? Yeah. So this is very often the case, from Italian migrants who Albanians who moved to Italy, who didn't teach their children in Albanian. So when they returned in 2008, they had very big difficulties to follow the school, the education, the instructions in the country. So, this is a very complex question. So I don't think that there's a lot of hope that families would return. I think there is an option uh, for transnational return, in the sense that people would go back, they would invest, they would try to make a living part-time. There are, new ways of doing economy. You can do remote work. There are so many options now where you don't have to live for good at a place. Yeah. And here, of course, the respective government has to provide the conditions, the necessary conditions for instance, for remote workers. Yeah. Other countries are doing that a lot. I think Albania also has a legislation now in this direction. Yeah. So you could go there. Albania wants to attract. It's not only the co-ethnic. It's, of course, when we speak about return, we speak about Albanians. Yeah. But we also have to speak about immigration. Immigration is extremely important. Yeah. As I mentioned briefly, there is quite a lot of Italian immigration now to Albania. Yeah. They are retirement migrants. Yeah. So they hope to
Who are
make a
spending the
certain living.
last
Sorry?
who are spending the last years of their life in
Yeah, no.
Albania,
Yeah,
especially in the coast of
at the
Albania.
coast, yeah, at Flora, in Flora, I think is a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah, so I think it's generally it's a very dynamic situation, and as I said, I think return is probably a concept that is a little bit outdated for understanding the current processes of migration, because people, of course, they do return, but probably mostly temporarily, and they would come and go. They would have many international companies work like that. Yeah, they come and go, and they have their locations on two or more places. Yeah, in the world. So I think this is the reality of the present time. Yeah. So this old concept of gurbet, or return, is very much also a nostalgic idea. I think it appears to be a nostalgic fantasy or not fantasy, imagination, of those uh, who in melancholic circumstances, which happens very often among migrants. Yeah, mostly among those migrants who didn't intend to stay abroad. Yeah, and are now, yeah, many old people, they don't like to stay alone in the villages. They rather go with their children, yeah, and they hang out now in Vienna, in Munich, or in Berlin, yeah. And of course, for them, the idea of return is still very, very relevant, but not for their grandchildren. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's true. Thank you. I think that we don't have other question, or yeah. So, Professor Pichler, thank you once again for sharing your time, your expertise, and insights with us today. Your presentation has given us much to reflect on regarding migration, return, and these challenges, realities on our Western Balkans. So I would like also to thank all the RECAS fellows and participants for joining us and for contributing to this discussion. Thank you for being here, and I wish you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and have a good
Thank,
day too. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.